Good morning, everybody. Meteorologist Blake Mathews here. Just checking in on Tropical Storm Dorian. We have the very latest information coming in from the National Hurricane Center. Dorian still holding with winds of about 50 miles an hour. Has been struggling a little bit due to an environment that it's in, very unfavorable with a lot of dry air surrounding this very tiny system, what we are dubbing a microcane. And it has moved through Barbados last night, producing wind gusts up to 55 miles an hour. And you can see that storm right here just getting ready to cross over into the Caribbean Sea. And it is headed in the general direction of Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico is under a hurricane watch along with a tropical storm warning, as this storm is expected to close in on that island as we get into tomorrow. Now, here's the very latest information. Once again, we're still looking at sustained winds right around 50 miles an hour, moving to the west-northwest at 13, and that pressure holding steady at 1,005 millibars. So once again, a tiny little system there that is just pushing through the Leeward and Windward Islands as we speak. Now, give me just 1 second here to pull my little computer around. There we go. So, taking a look here at the latest cone, you'll see that we're talking about that movement there to the west-northwest at 13, going to continue to push up towards Puerto Rico, perhaps clipping the east end of the Dominican Republic as this continues to push off towards the west-northwest. Look at the winds here, up to 65 miles an hour heading into Wednesday morning at 7 o'clock. Now, the big change from yesterday is that this storm is expected to remain a tropical storm, at least per the National Hurricane Center, over the next couple of days. So while we were looking at this possibly strengthening into a hurricane yesterday, now the forecast has been downgraded just a little bit to keep this as a strong tropical storm as it pushes towards Puerto Rico, obviously an island that was devastated a few years ago, and they are still trying to recover. So this is not something that they need. Now, what's interesting is that the computer models continue to hone in on the fact that this storm may actually survive the trek across Hispaniola and redevelop here and get stronger across the Bahamas. Look at the winds, up to 70 miles an hour as it crosses through Andros Island here, and 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm as we get into Sunday morning at 7 a.m., just crossing into Vero Beach. This is going to be up towards Port St. Lucie. This is going to be in Martin County, Indian River County, perhaps maybe even southern Brevard County. So if you're familiar with Florida, the East Coast here, this is an area that I lived in for a couple of years. Obviously a big vacation destination. So if you have Labor Day plans for the state of Florida, you're going to want to keep a very close eye on this. Jacksonville, you guys are in the cone. Tampa's in the cone, all the way down through Collier County and into Monroe County as well. So you can see a huge chunk of Florida in the cone, something we're going to continue to watch here over the course of the next couple of days. This certainly is not a guarantee, but something that could threaten the state over the course of the next 5 days or so. Here is a look at the spaghetti models. Clearly, you can see why the National Hurricane Center has the cone pointed that direction. All of the computer models, all the spaghetti models here are in very tight agreement, showing some sort of system, whether it be a weak tropical storm, a mid-range tropical storm, a strong tropical storm, or even a weak hurricane headed towards the peninsula here. And what's interesting about this, if you know anything about hurricanes in the state of Florida, you don't normally get tropical storms and hurricanes on the north end of the state. It's very difficult to get storms up in this region. Part of the reason why is North Florida is actually the furthest western point on the east coast of the United States. It's like in this little bowl right here. So to get a storm into North Florida is very, very difficult to do. It's only happened once in the last 100 years as far as a hurricane goes. So to see a storm this high up on the peninsula is pretty unusual. So we're going to continue to watch this. So those of you that have interest there in Orlando, Tampa, Gainesville, of course a lot of football fans there is what I'm trying to say. Headed to the Florida games, you may want to watch this system again as if you have plans to head over towards the Gainesville area. Now, here's a look at the latest satellite. Once again, it's a very small system, very tiny. The core of the winds only go about 45 miles out from the center, so it doesn't take up a whole lot of real estate here, but these small systems are notorious because they strengthen very rapidly and they weaken very rapidly. So we'll continue to watch this as it makes its way towards the north and west, towards San Juan, Puerto Rico, perhaps maybe clipping the east end here of the Dominican Republic as it makes its way up towards the southern end of the Bahamas. This does include the Turks and Caicos Islands. So again, Labor Day plans, if you have plans to the islands, whether it be the Bahamas, whether it be Puerto Rico, whether it be the Windward and Leeward Islands, well actually it's pushing through the Windward and Leeward Islands right now, so if you are headed out here to the far eastern Caribbean, you'll be okay. We're talking about more up towards the mainland U.S. That's where you're going to want to start paying attention. Again, Labor Day for the state of Florida could be impacted by some sort of tropical entity as we get into the Saturday, Sunday time frame. So once again, those of you just joining us, here's the very latest information coming in from the National Hurricane Center. Current winds right around 50 miles an hour, moving to the west-northwest at 13. That pressure holding at 1,005 millibars. Here's the very latest cone. Once again, we've got tropical storm watches and warnings in effect for the islands. We also have a hurricane watch in effect for the island of Puerto Rico. That does obviously include San Juan, and a hurricane watch here for the east end of the Dominican Republic on the east end of the island of Hispaniola. Now the cone does take this through the Bahamas, approaching Andros Island here Saturday morning as a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm and a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm as it gets ready to close into Vero Beach. So not totally out of the question that we could see a low-end hurricane move through the state of Florida as we get into Labor Day. So certainly keep an eye on this system as it makes its way towards the U.S. mainland. We'll have more information coming up on Dorian coming up today on the 411. That is also when we'll get the next advisory from the National Hurricane Center.